Hi, everybody. I'm Sharon Nash Alexander. Welcome to Black Mental Health Matters, the Black Mental Health Matters show. And Black mental health does matter. It's very important for we as Black people to look into our mental health and take care of our mental health. It's been such a stigma for us for so many years. And so this is so great. I'm so excited to be talking about this and that they invited me to host this show. And today we're going to be hosting my family because we all have ADHD. But first I want to bring on Dr. Anati Makwandi. Did I say it right?
Makiwane.
Makawani. I'm so sorry. I want to bring her on. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Such a talented and woman. She is a family physician. She's health and certified transformation life coach. She's had 15 years of experience as a family physician. She's the president of Black Mental Health Matters. She's a keynote speaker. She is a life coach focusing on men's health and children's mental health. She's the first Black female physician in Canada to host a virtual men's health talk show, which runs once a week. And recently, she shared the stage with Dr. Martin Luther King III on the World Diversity Conference, where she took a discourse on her expertise on men's mental health. And men's mental health is really needed, especially Black men, because they don't want to talk about it, right?
Yes.
So, and I hear that you're an expert in about ADHD. So tell me, first of all, what is it? Tell me that, and then tell me the difference, because they used to say ADD. When I came up, they said ADD. What's the difference in ADD and ADHD?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sharon, for bringing me on, and welcome actually to our team. We love to have you here. And actually, hello to everyone watching us. First of all, before I say anything about this diagnosis, I would love everyone to invite their parents, their relatives, their friends, teacher friends, colleagues, everyone, parents, because this diagnosis, Sharon, carries a lot of stigma. And the problem is, like you said, more especially in our community, in the Black community. But I must say, thanks to COVID-19, because even now people are coming out, men are coming out to talk about their mental health, and just generally. So we are an evolving community, so I'm proud of us. And going back to your question, yes, ADD, ADHD is used interchangeably, but we tend to use the ADHD because by definition, it's attention, right? What is it? ADHD, right? It's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. But some people, these diagnoses has three types. There's people that will have the hyperactivity type. There'll be people that will be inattentive. And then there'll be people that will have combined of these symptoms, all right? And it's not always hyperactivity. So a lot of times, though, people get missed, more especially the inattentive one. More especially those kids, they are sitting right in class. They are basically somewhere. They live there in the class, but they're somewhere in England. So those are the type of kids that get missed. I'm quite interested in knowing how you guys got diagnosed, because we tend to miss it. Even clinicians like myself, if we don't dig and get to the bottom of it, we could miss those ones. But we're going to talk more about it as we go along.
Yes. It's so interesting, too, because we have three generations, and I'm going to bring them on. I'm going to bring on my mother. Her name is Host Nash, and she is also a psychiatric nurse. She's retired. And my niece, Naja Simpson, and she's a fashion designer. And my mother also raised two children, myself and my brother, who had ADHD. Now, when I was a child, I was the bouncing off the walls kind of child. But now I'm not like that anymore. So I want my mother to talk a little bit about that. But I also want to give you guys one little fact that I saw. According to the, let me see. Okay. Well, I'll come back to that. Mommy, I have to call her mommy. That's what I call her. So go ahead and talk about what it was like raising two children and how you knew that something was wrong.
Well, because of my ADHD, I believe it helped me to help my children. So I just really worked hard on every little detail about them. And I didn't know my problem, and I didn't really know their problem. By the time you, Sharon, were growing up, I just had common sense, because I think ADHD is some common sense involved in it. So you have to have common sense about the things that you need to do and that you don't need to do. So I always worked on not damaging the self-esteem of my children. And if my children, if Sharon was carrying on and causing difficulties, I would correct her, but not make her feel bad.
Which is something. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
For example, if the teacher says that you're doing this and you're doing that, then when I got home, I would say to Sharon, maybe that was affecting you, but he's the teacher, and you can't speak like that to the teacher.
Yeah. I was the hyperactive type. And also, when she would take me to people's houses, I would touch all their stuff, jump on their stuff, and they would say I was bad. And that did affect my self-esteem still today. That caused a lot of shame for me. I remember, because back then they didn't know. I was born in 1960. So I can remember when I was 4 years old or 5 years old, she took me to a psychiatrist. And what did they give us, Mommy? Thorazine?
They gave you Thorazine, and then that she was like a zombie. And I knew that wasn't right. And so I gave it to her for a few days, and then I said no. So I took her off it myself, and I didn't give it to her anymore. So I just tried to control the situation. I didn't take her to anybody's house because I knew that didn't work. And I tried to do the things that I could see that worked. And so again, common sense is what really matters about in ADHD.
And then I want to bring Naja in, because she was born in the 90s. So by this time, of course, doctor, people know all about it. They have all kinds of medicine. They have all kinds of things for it. So Naja, tell us about yourself. And you take meds, and do you know a lot of people that your friends that have it as well, and they talk about it?
So it's funny because one of my best friends now just got diagnosed at my best friend from college at 25. And she just started taking medicine for it, because I kept telling her, we kept having conversations, and I was like, I think you do have ADHD. I really think you should go get that checked out and see. And so then they ended up saying, yes, she did it. Now she takes Adderall. But for me, is she coming back? Should I wait?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. For me, I actually didn't know that I had ADHD. Because I did really well in school. School was never really an issue for me, but I just was bored. And so I wasn't sure if I was just advanced. My mom didn't know if it was just oh, she's just advanced, or she's just, bored and not paying attention or whatever. But I always got good grades. So there was and I wasn't hyperactive in class. So it wasn't even oh, I was bouncing off the walls. Oh, I was doing this. I mean, I talked because I had a lot of friends. So I was friendly, but I never really had issues with hyperactivity in class. It was more so just focus. When it would be time to read, I still to this day cannot sit down and read a book. My brain just wanders off to where I read one word and it reminds me of something else. And now I'm in a whole other world. But when I got diagnosed, I was 14. I was a freshman in high school, and we ended up going to a specialist. I don't remember what made us go and check this out, but we just ended up going to an ADHD specialist, one of the only ones where we live. And he did all these like tests and asked me questions, and I did like all these different things. And he ended up saying, oh yeah, you do have ADHD. So then we tried a bunch of different, we started on Vyvanse. But my issue, and once I got on that, I realized like, wow, this is how I could have been this entire time. Like once I got on medicine, because I just felt like more like grounded. Like the way that we explain it, me and my mom and my grandma, we say like either horses or gumballs. So basically the way I explain it, my thoughts are gumballs in a machine, and like when I take my medicine, it's like you put in the 25 cents and one gumball comes down, and it's just like more controlled. When I don't have my medicine, like it's just like, oh, they're just shooting out at you, and like you can't really control all the thoughts.
That's great. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so that's kind of how right now I'm not medicated. I've actually haven't been on my Vyvanse in the past 3 months, and I'm like learning to function without it. I've been off and on it throughout college, and you know what, I got back on it. I stopped before I went to college, and I got back on it my senior year to do my senior thesis because I just knew I needed a bit more focus, and it was very beneficial to me because my biggest thing is like procrastination. Like I know that that's like my main thing with my ADHD, that I just put it off and put it off and put it off until like I have no more time to put it off. And I'm like, well, I have to do it now. I can't get distracted. I can't go do other things. And then I'll just sit and work on something for like 16 plus hours nonstop.
So, and it's so interesting.
Can I say something? Can I say,
yes,
can I say
sure.
something now about the procrastination?
Yeah.
Now, there are different areas of ADHD, as we all know. Well, where nausea procrastinates, I'm the opposite. I said, I'm going to do it right now before I forget it. And so my children and people I know don't understand what is this push? What is this rush? Well, if I don't do it right now, then I may not do it. So whatever I'm going to do, even till today, I do it like right now. I don't stop. I don't put it off. I do it right now. When I have my car keys, I put in my purse right now. Whatever it is I have to do. And so that really helps. And so that's, I guess, the opposite of procrastination.
Yeah.
Can I land there? I would like to actually, I want to take along to what you just said. It's such a beautiful feature for you, which is a gain. But then there's also a slight, there's a thin line with that impulsivity. Because remember, with the ADHD, there's also that impulsivity. As you heard her, she said, if she has to do something, she has to do it right now. And she pointed the important aspects of that, I don't want to lose my key. But now here's the thing, it gets tricky in the decision making. Because people with ADHD, there's that impulsivity. The main features is that impulsivity. It's the inattention sometimes. For, like I said, if you have a combined and that hyperactivity. So that impulsivity sometimes can be a danger in decision making because you want it now. People with ADHD, actually, we've seen them when you look at the studies, even people who have fines on the road because they are rushing. They want it now. They are doing things in a rushing manner, right? So that can also, but now she's older. She has controlled impulses, but that impulsivity, it kicks in class. You hear your teachers saying, your child, he doesn't wait till he's 10. He wants to say it now, right now. So I just wanted to just add on to that. It has its beauty, and also there's also a little danger in that. One has to be mindful, and the support from good parents like you did. I must say you were amazing to have caught it that early in the 60s, because we're starting to see even adults coming right now saying, Doc, I've lived my life, all my life like this. So obviously parents didn't really catch it. And back then, who knew about this? And there was stigma around it. I must say you are such an amazing parent. And not to say for parents who have not really gotten this enlightenment are bad parents. There's no bad parent. Actually, you know what, Sharon? I hated the word. I never wanted even daycare. Every time I took my child, like he doesn't have ADHD, but I hate the word BAD because it changes the child's mindset, right? So I always, even with the daycare people, I say, don't ever use this word to my child and even to the kids that come to your daycare. So I'm proud of you to have said that.
Yeah, she's a good mother. She's a star maker. I mean, regardless of, I mean, we went through a lot of things. She had to deal with both of us. And my other sister, which we could probably have her on at some time, she doesn't have any of this. And she raised Naja, and my mother is her mother, and I'm her sister. She's all around ADHD people, but she doesn't have it. So that's also interesting, because my mother spent a lot of time with me and my brother because we were in need, right? So, but mommy, I have to call you mommy because that's her to see. Tell us about, you were born in 1939. So in the 40s, you grew up on a farm. Your family had no idea about any of this. How did it present itself then for you as a child growing up on a farm and all of that in Louisiana?
Well, for some reason, I just liked what I liked and wanted what I wanted. And my saying that y'all know about whatever I want and whatever I like, 10 white horses can't stop it.
Right.
So that's how I was. But again, I had common sense that I believed my mother was really a good woman. And I believed whatever she said. And so she might have had ADHD herself. My mother said, I believed it. And so whatever she told me to do or not to do, except a few things, like going in the garden to get the peaches, I would do that. Or I would lose all my things at the bus stop. Well, I tried my best, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. I couldn't really do anything about that. But I always worked hard on whatever I wanted to do. And so then when my children came along, we didn't know then about ADHD and about medication for ADHD and all of that. But I just knew that Sharon, was the most difficult one. And the people in the neighborhood couldn't stand her. And so I had to, do all that with her. But by the time Joey came along 10 years later, we knew about ADHD and medication. So he took medication. And
he also had learning disability as well.
He was he was charming and different from Sharon, but very hyper.
Are you saying that I am not charming?
What?
Are you saying I'm not charming?
No.
Okay.
What?
but when I years later, when I was going to nursing school, then I finally realized I needed some medication so I could graduate because I failed nursing school, and I went and got tested when I was in my 40s and got some medication, and I took the medication just while I was finishing school. And the doctor that I went to told me that the medication is dope, and that if I take it, I'm going to get addicted. And I told him he didn't know what he was talking about. And so I took the medication and I didn't get addicted. But when I finished school, I stopped taking it. But I could probably use it now, but I don't because I can cope without it. But for anybody who's listening, when you have ADHD, it causes a lot of anxiety because you have to work hard on doing the right thing, on saying the right thing, on behaving appropriately. And that causes a lot of anxiety.
Okay. Doctor, can you explain the symptoms in clarity? Somebody's asking a comment.
Yes, I wanted to actually get to that, Sharon. Thank you so much. So like we said, ADHD is either it has that inattention exclusively or combined inattention and hyperactivity. And then there's other symptoms that come along. A child is, like Sharon mentioned, she was everywhere. She would be touching stuff. I mean, when we see kids coming to our clinics, they would be touching the equipment. They are hyper, they climbing, and actually they are risk averse. They could climb the top tree and not realizing how they're gonna get down. They're not scared, they're fearless, which is amazing that they're fearless, but there's a thin line there too. They could climb a bridge. They're very accident prone too. And also they very sometimes disorganized with their schoolwork. They lose things a lot at school. The teachers get concerned. And of course, other kids sometimes, you find that your child coming back from school might not enjoy school because other kids pick on him or her, because it's either she or he's impulsive, she's always taking the first line, all that kind of stuff. So other kids, because they still try to figure themselves out too, right? And they are not able to navigate their own emotions, let alone to navigate another child. So that's usually something we see a lot. And also, you might notice that your child, you think he or she's uncooperative, like other people that are not enlightened would say he or she's a bad child, because you say do this and she does the opposite sometimes. So Sharon earlier mentioned that her brother also had a learning disability or learning disorder, let's rather put it that way. So ADHD, it tends to also have other mental health illnesses that go with it. So, like for instance, depression could kick in, anxiety. Your mom just mentioned that, because you are anxious, you want to be right here, you want to be on top of things, you want to be on time on things. So anxiety can kick in. And sometimes we do see conduct disorders where a child is perceived as defiant, right? And a lot of these kids, when left untreated, they drop out of school, right? Because they get frustrated, they feel left out, they feel they don't belong. The teachers sometimes are impatient because they're not trained to do this. One time I was actually interviewing a colleague, and she said some schools there in the US, they don't even have a nurse, to assess all this, right? So they dependent on the education system. Basically, they do have their psychologists there. But what if you don't have, and also parents who are not educated about this, right? So there's a lot of things, and they could also be bullies because they're trying to get that power back, right? They tend to be in also groups of, if you are a parent not doing your work to guide your child to build that self-esteem, your child could get lost in the system and in the world and could belong in the wrong gangs. Like I said, these kids, they have a high risk of belonging to group gangs, to bullies. They drop out of schools. They, at a later stage, sometimes they do suffer from antisocial personality disorders. They end up in jail. So they need that support. I'm very keen and also very excited about this topic, because parents sometimes, it doesn't matter which actually socioeconomic background they're from, it tends to have this stigma. And actually I was looking at an article in the US with the over 6 million kids that have ADHD there. It's interesting that they below like 2 million kids, 2 to 5, because when we diagnose ADHD, you can start seeing the symptoms around 3. But we tend to say, you know what, kids are kids, because there's a thin line there. Sometimes you can say it's just a child. You just need to observe them closely. We encourage, I always do this. I don't like putting little kids that age on ADHD medications. Of course, you treat cases, individually. But what I've seen on your studies there, kids between 3 to 5, they're already on medication. Come on, they're not even started school, they're in play school. So there is a room for behavioral therapy, the teaching the parent, the teaching the system, and advocating for your kids, for the system to help these therapists, these people that are trained to help these kids. And I want to say, actually, this, Sharon, ADHD people, they are the most creative. Look at her little list there. They are very creative, amazing ideas. I have colleagues that have ADHD. They're very smart people. I want our viewers to realize this. It has nothing to do with you are not smart, you stupid. No, no, no. It's just how your brain is wired. Like she said that her brain goes do instead of the nice way. That's all it is. It's just to wire. When we start people on medication, is to give that wave again. All right. So it has nothing to do with their IQ. They are smart. Like I said, I have colleagues that are creative, that are doing amazing things. They come up with all these great ideas. So people need to accept their kids, get educated in this, spend more time also in family therapy, understanding, because Sharon didn't deserve to be excluded by her neighbors. But what do they know? So I think this is a community thing. This is a global thing. This is when we say village raises a child, it's
Yes.
just about that.
Yeah.
We need to accept
Yes.
people and love them, right?
Yes.
So I really like that.
Yes, exactly. I
Well,
think
a lot
that's
of people.
Go ahead.
A lot of people let what other people think affect them, and when you have ADHD, a lot of times you are different. Now, Naja may not, my granddaughter may not, may fit in better because she doesn't have the hyperactivity. But because I have the hyperactivity, then, people can see that you're saying these wild things and that you're acting kind of off. And so then they judge you and treat you that way.
Yeah,
But
because she's a little. My mother
when
is
I'm thinking
pretty
about
unfiltered.
those things, I say something's wrong with you. Nothing's wrong with me. And I understand what I'm saying, but I don't let what they think of me affect me. And my other saying is, what you think of me is none of my business.
Yeah, she's very impulsive. I'm gonna let you talk, Naj, but she's very impulsive in the way she talks, and I used to be like that too, and sometimes I still am. But there will be times when she's saying things and we're looking at her like, did she just say that to those people? But it's a part of her thing. But my mother grew up on a farm in Louisiana, but she's been on 46 cruises. She's been traveled all over the world. She's done all kinds of things. And again, she helped to make us stars. And my niece Naja is a fashion designer. She created her own website, najanash.com, you guys. Her own website. She does everything, and it is amazing all the stuff that she can do. So let's talk a little bit too about like our.
Really quick, I just wanted to say something.
Go ahead.
To also speak on the symptoms, I just remembered that when I was in middle school, I used to lose things all the time. Like I would lose every single phone I had. I would lose money. I lost my camera. I would go to the skating rink like every Friday with my friends. Every time I went, I would lose something. Well, I would say it was stolen because I would set it down and someone would take it. Like, my brain wasn't, it was so many like things happening around me, so many stimulus that I would be like, oh, my friend's over here talking. Oh, we need to get food. Oh, we need to go skate. And I'd have my phone and I'd set it down, or I'd set it down to tie my skate. And I'd walk away because I was just so overly stimulated that I would forget to grab it. And then I'd come home and I'd be in trouble because this is like the third phone that I lost. I lost my skates. I lost my my digital camera. I lost like 3 phones. Every time I went to the mall, I would lose something or forget something. I'd leave bags, like I was shopping, I'd leave them sitting in the food court. So I think that also is something that made my parents question, like, well, why does this keep happening? Like, what? Because there's no way that I just was completely, like, I even tried to pay attention to it. I wasn't just like, oh, whatever. So I feel like that's also one of the symptoms. And I also want to say that I don't know if, there's also like very high functioning ADHD people. Like, I guess I would consider myself that it's not always also like the child that is acting out and that is, doing that. You can just, something's wrong with them, because I was never in trouble in school. I got good grades. My work was always done, things like that. So no one would have even questioned, is something going on? I wouldn't have even questioned that. It wasn't until I was getting older and I was like, I just think I could be better at things, even though I was already like, I didn't get my first B till I was in like 8th grade. Like my parents thought I was just, I was doing everything right. I was very social. I never got in trouble. I never, anything like that. So you wouldn't have guessed, oh, something's wrong. So for those who are watching as well, don't just think, oh, well, if my child's not in trouble, they're not doing all these things, they're not acting out, they're not, their schoolwork isn't whatever, that they aren't still struggling, because they might be, and they just don't know it yet. And I did not know how much I was struggling, because I thought it was normal for people to like sit and try to read a page over and over again, but they keep getting distracted. And I never knew to express that to someone else, because I thought, oh, well, that's just what, because you just don't want to read, or, I just thought that was normal. So I never told anyone to know that that was a symptom of something else. And because my schoolwork was done and I was getting A's and all that, no one even knew that I was struggling. But once I got on medicine, I was like, oh my gosh, wow, like my life has improved so much that I would like, so now I tell people, like, I mean, I'm not an advocate for medicine, but I think that if you do feel like you have ADHD, I think it's worth a try, just to see if it does better your life in a way, and like make things easier for you, because like at times it's really necessary. Like in school, like it was very helpful for me. Now I've graduated and it would help me in everyday life with things, but I feel like I can cope now kind of without it. But in school, definitely, like it was very helpful. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you,
Can I
Naja.
say something there,
Sure.
Sharon? Just to what Naja was saying. Yes, you're right, Naja. We see a lot of trouble with focus and concentration, and it gets even more pronounced as you grow because there's more responsibilities, right? And I just want to share this with what I've been seeing in practice now. We're starting to see adults coming in. I can't forget this young lady who is a lawyer now, started right in summer. She said all along, she's a Black woman. She said all along, my parents thought I was just this hyper kid, just being hyper, and a bad kid because I would not listen. I would say things back to them. So it seemed like she was an uncooperative kid. And she thrived in school. But now she said, I'm noticing that I'm trying to focus with this study. And first of all, people with ADHD, if they are left untreated, they move from one job to the other. They could never find satisfaction because they don't finish tasks, and they get in trouble a lot with their colleagues or with their seniors because and they would advocate for themselves because they tend to have this bold character, right? And then they leave the job, like, you know what, they don't like me there, they move to another job, so they move from job to the other. And sometimes risky in relationships too, because there's a lot of conflicts with their relationships. We've seen people actually divorcing, right? Because they could never work well with their partners. And also even with finances, you impulsive, you see something like when I put my patients on medication, they say, doc, most especially they stay at home moms, they say, you know what, I no longer sit in front of the computer and start shopping online and get into trouble when my husband comes back, because we did not budget for this. And then I just find myself impulsive, even impulsive with food. I have put people on medication to help with those impulses, So you're right, Naja, there's a place for medication. We're not saying people should not be medicated. As we grow, there's more responsibilities. You want to be a responsible adult, a citizen, and be something out in the world, right? And create. So there is a place for it. And this lady I was talking about, she's happy now that she's on medication. She could focus. And actually, she said, I'm straight A's. I used to be a GDDD. I'm a straight A. So that potential, it gets unleashed when you get the help you need. And the therapy. I want people to go on therapy.
Yes.
Our people.
Yes.
Therapy, behavioral therapy has a place, and of course, medication has its own place too. And honestly, I know that sometimes parents, they don't necessarily want to accept diagnosis. We use a criteria. There's DSM-5 that is right there to basically is the same we use for depression, for anxiety, for personality disorders, for schizophrenia, all these illnesses. So what we do use is the same criteria to diagnose ADHD. So those criteria, and you are the witness. We use teachers, we use family, yourself, yourself, all this collateral information, we use it to get to the diagnosis, right? So people, I know that there's a lot of stigma to it. I don't think it's my child who has this. This is not a disability. This is just how your brain is wired.
Yes, exactly. And just also being misunderstood and trying to explain it to someone, even your husband or your close friends who think you're messy or you're disorganized. Now, for me, it presents like that. For my niece, she's very, very neat. But for me, it's always been that way. And my father would come and say, clean your room. It looks like a rat's butt. And I could not figure out how to get it clean. My husband is very clean. He doesn't really understand, how I get overwhelmed and I can't figure that out. Also, how sometimes depression and anxiety go with ADD. And until I got started taking meds for depression and anxiety, I hear a little squeaking. I don't know what that is. I didn't know. I had a low grade depression my whole life. I was like, this is how normal feels. This is how other people feel all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I take depression, and that helps me because isn't it something with the dopamine or something with the transmitters or whatever?
Right.
Yeah. So
there's a relation there sometimes, with depression, we do see there are some people that would have low levels of dopamine, which is our happy neurotransmitters, the serotonin. So sometimes people, they have low, like you said, it can coexist. So there's that depression that kicks in. And I think it's mostly the stress that comes with this. You are anxiously wanting to do things right. No one needs to be in that high cortisol level. We need to be leveled as humans to function, right? So that could actually create depression and that isolation. Sometimes kids are wonderful creatures, but they can be mean, So, and also sometimes I want to mention this, teachers also can be mean. Teachers are helpful, they're amazing. But sometimes because of the lack of training in the school system and also other schools that are not fortunate to have these education psychologists, they are not trained. So as a result, they are mean. Sometimes they will not pick your child to answer and all the time. And then your child doesn't thrive in class. So I think the key thing is parents to be transparent. It starts with acceptance, accepting your child. And also I want to mention this, when a relationship doesn't work out between parents, we do see another parent not agreeing with what's happening in the medical system. So your child is put on medication, but when the child goes to the father's side or the mother's side, no, my child won't be on medication. So it creates a lot of conflict and confusion to a child too. So I always, as a rule, I always want to discuss this with both parents if they're involved or if the person is in the picture, so that we are all on the same path, just for the benefit of the child and the success of your child. So the transparency, talking to your teachers, and being honest, because some kids, when they're on medication, they need a second dose by the afternoon, right? Because school ends maybe around 3:30, or for some kids, they need another dose maybe at lunchtime, right? So that transparency is very important, and communicating with them so that they can help your child to thrive. Like I said, we have the most amazing, actually, Simone, the young girl who is the gymnast, she has ADHD. Look at how great this girl is and celebrated. I find we tend to celebrate strangers, and yet we have such creative people in our homes. So we need to embrace these kids because they are capable.
Yes. And I agree. And what you said about therapy is so important. And I knew when I was in college, I started finding a therapist, and I've had therapy steadily for 10 years with Dr. Robin Bentonhouse. Shout out to her. Dr. Scott Symington for 10 years. And now with Dr. Frida Birnbaum. I believe in talk therapy to help you. And they were the ones that kind of helped me get diagnosed and all that too. So that's very important. I wanted to also jump on what Naja was saying about losing things, because that's one of my main problems. Losing my keys several times a day, losing my wallet several times a day, losing my phone. And then when you lose things, then it makes you feel bad because you're like, why do I keep losing these things? Mommy, tell them about the story about leaving at the airport. The airport story.
Only about 5 years ago, I said about how I hurried with things. So the first time I went to the airport without my husband for this particular trip, the shuttle was slow coming. So the second time I went to the airport, the shuttle came right up. I jumped off the shuttle, grabbed my bag, jumped out of the car, grabbed my bag, got on the shuttle. When I came back the next day from Houston, I went up to my car. My car was parked in a enclosed fence area. When I went up to my car to start my car, I looked in my purse for my keys, nowhere to be found. I kept looking. I walked up to my car. The keys were in the car. I had left the car running from the day before, and it ran till it ran out of gas. And so I had to call somebody to come and get me some gas. And my husband is a very good man, but he has no patience with things like that. So anytime I do something stupid, then I have to handle it myself. So I had to call somebody to come and bring me some gas. And another situation, I left my baby in the car and ran into the drugstore. And, long ago, we used to, I'm talking about 40 years, 50 years, we used to, you could lock your car and run in the drugstore. The car's parked right in front of the store. And we didn't know about folks stealing babies and all that. So I ran in there to take the prescription, ran out because it was real cold in Maryland. Well, the keys were locked in the car was running, and my baby was in the car. And it was snowing. So I called my husband. He said, well, too bad, you have to figure this out yourself. And so it didn't make me feel bad that he didn't help me. I just figured it out myself, And there are so many incidents of things like that I did when I was old and had 3 children. And I had to figure out for myself, and I didn't blame anybody else. I spent that time figuring it out.
So can I touch on that?
Really? I love this.
No, you can go.
Go ahead, Naja.
Oh, I just wanted to touch on now and losing things, because I used to be really bad at that. And I think now, so I also have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And so it has gotten a lot more apparent in my life now. And I think that I developed that more to counteract parts of my ADHD. And so now I'm like so organized and so particular and such a perfectionist, and things have to be like exactly a certain way. And I think that I became that way because I was like always losing things, and I felt disorganized and disheveled all the time and just not on top of things the way I wanted to. So I found that control in this other way. And so I think it just kind of like grew in my brain, and now I'm like extremely particular with everything. And so I don't have those same ADHD symptoms anymore. Like I still have like the impulsive and the impulsivity and, all that, but the losing thing. So I feel like, I don't know if I grew out of it or if that's my OCD too, that just kind of now I just feel more balanced in certain places. So I just wanted to throw that in, because we are also talking about how you can have anxiety and depression and, things like that. But also OCD is a major one for me as well, that keeps me kind of like this back and forth.
Tell me, Naja, I want to ask about that, because yes, we do OCD with it. And how does it affect it? Because once you start getting that OCD, it can also be time consuming. You want things in order, because also there's also that frustration that comes with it, because again, you're trying to be proper. If you are employed, you want to please your boss, you want to make sure things are done, but then you can also miss doing other things because you are focusing on this one task. So there's also that comes with it. And then that anxiety kicks in. It's such an interesting phenomenon, because again, if we leave ADHD untreated, now there's also that. And in your case, you did well in terms of being treated early in your life, but it could be possible that it's just coexistence of these two, and you are aware of it. Because I think the other thing is we need to start teaching is that mindfulness meditation, that stop thinking and acting. because once you are aware of it, and then you can be able to help yourself with that, right? So
Yeah.
there's also that element that it can also be. I would be interested. How is it affecting your life? That being organized, making proper things. How is it with your time?
So it actually is very time consuming, especially with me being a designer, and everything being about aesthetically pleasing and things looking a certain way. And because I'm a perfectionist with that, I learned that I'm better at, I have to sit down and just hyper focus for hours. So I will literally sit and work on something for 13 plus hours a day, and I won't get up to eat. I won't, like, my mom will be like, have you drank water today? Have you eaten? Get up and walk around, stretch. But I'm like, no, because I'll break my focus, because this is now my ADHD. Once I break my focus, if I stop to eat, it takes me hours just to get back into that like nonstop, okay, nothing can distract me, I'm going to get this done right now wave. And so I just tend to like go in overdrive with everything that I do. So it takes so much time just doing little things. I spend so much time organizing and planning because I want to account for not running into any issues. So I'm a planner. I plan out every single little thing before I do anything. So then that way when I go to do it, it's just smooth sailing. And like I feel like it takes me longer than other people. Like when I was in fashion school, I would, and I'm an overachiever, so I always wanted to do the most crazy idea, and we had the least amount of time and whatever, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I just wanted to do it because this is what was in my head. And there were people around me who could just sit down, you know, they'd work a couple hours here and then they'd go home and then they'd come back the next day and they work a couple hours. And I would still be there working all day, all night, no sleep, no food. Did you take a break? No. And it was because I know that my ADHD is not going to allow me to stop and take a break and go do this and stop and take a break. And my OCD was like, let's just do it now. Let's just like, we're here. Let's plan it out. Let's make sure there's no errors, no issues, no. And then I would just, once I spent hours and hours planning and getting that figured out, then I would just sit down, and if I didn't run into any issues, it'd be fine and I could be done. But then, you know, you can never account for that. So I do spend a lot of my time planning, perfecting, organizing, making sure things are a certain way. And it makes me feel like at peace because I don't have control of my ADHD in certain ways. So I think that level of control in all the other aspects that I can have control in my life, just give me like a sense of like balance, and like I just feel a little more calm.
Oh, I love that, Naja. Yes, I asked that because we tend to see some parts of you suffering. And that's when the frustration kicks in because you feel like, I'm trying my best.
Mm-hmm.
I am doing this. Look at what I've done. Look at this product. Look at, because people with OCD, they look at the final product. Look at what I've done. But then now they get frustrated when someone says, but this, you did not do it. And this was expected of you, right? So that, I think that piece, it needs that balance also for you to live a fulfilled life so that you are more happier and more in balance. And I know that it's trying to balance your life, but maybe that you could work with the therapy and all therapists. And also that the one thing I like about this diagnosis is also helping that organization, like let's not underestimate journaling even in adults. You know, those little things that could help, those little things they build up, you know, because you also don't want your personal life to suffer, your social life. You don't want to be in your studio to 13 hours and your friends were expecting you or your partner was expecting you. You know what I mean? So it's also a good feature that you could add it into your life.
Yeah.
I feel like there's certain things that I have grown out of. One was being hyper, but also I'm never late. Now I have a talent for being on time, but part of the reason for that was I missed a plane going somewhere one time for a job and I lost the job. So I said to myself, I'm not going to be late again. So now I make sure I get there way ahead of time. And I don't
like, yeah, 30 minutes earlier.
Yes, and I don't want to be late. And so if you're around me and you're going to be late, then we have a problem. My mother, one of the things that she does is whenever we're getting ready to go somewhere, she starts finding other things to do at the house. And we're like, it's time to go. But this is part of how hers shows because she starts doing other things.
Well, that's the ADHD in me, is that
I know
I'm fiddling around and doing this and doing that
Wash
and
the
doing
bowl,
that. And so
water
then
the
I'm always
plant.
late.
Yeah, she's always late, and
I'm always
and then
late.
the other thing is I've had to create systems for myself. And you guys, if you want to talk about this too, what have you created systems for yourself? Like for me, when I'm working, so I was a casting producer for America's Got Talent, and I had several people working under me, and I would tell them, do not put any paper on my desk. If you want to tell me something, you email it to me. Do not put paper on my desk because I will lose it. I won't know where it is, whatever. So they always have to email me. And also for myself, I keep things in cyberspace for myself. I don't have papers and stuff that I write stuff on. I have to have it in cyberspace so that I can remember, or I have a Google Calendar. I have to do that. So I have those little systems. And also for me, you're talking about the hyper focus. Hyper focus, I consider that the superpower of ADHD people, that we can hyper focus. And when I do my work, when I'm writing or whatever, that is just, I can just do that. So I love that part and the creativity part. So do you guys have systems that you used?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Well, I have 5 calendars.
You have what?
And I write things down on every calendar and on different little notes and little sheets of paper. And I can have on one sheet of paper, I can have 7 different things written on it. And it's all scrambled up and look a big mess. But I can figure out what it is and what it means and what it's telling me I need to do. And it depends on if I focus on it. But like yesterday, I was at the dermatologist, and he was saying he's going to give me some medication that's medicated or something. And I said, well, what is it? Well, he said, well, it's medicated. Well, I wanted to know what is it so that I can go find it. So then he went on out and went to the door, and I said, he said, well, we're not finished with you yet. I said, well, what's the medication? So it turns out that they gave me all these sheets of paper, and on one sheet of it was this medication. Well, I wanted him to tell me what it is, so when I go to look for it, because if I have to look through all these papers that somebody else has given me, then that's a problem. If it's my paper, I'm okay. But if it's your paper, then it's hard for me.
That's funny. I think, mine is, I think I make lists a lot. And like I said, I plan. So I wake up, and because I work for myself, I like my aunt said, I have my business. I wake up every morning and I make a list of everything that needs to be done. Now, I may never visit the list ever again. But it just makes me feel organized to see it all. And I gauge it like, okay, is this possible to do in a day? Can this all be done today? Do I need to move some things to this day? And I just literally wake up and do it every day. Like I just plan every single little thing out. And like I said, I guess that's my version of like having some type of control with my mind, at least, or of my mind, I would say. Like right now, I just moved to a new apartment and I'm planning out like my interiors and like how I want to decorate. And I'm taking like pictures of the stuff and putting it like on this one page and planning it out. Like I have to see everything mapped out, planned out. And then I feel just like safe and like, secure in that idea. Or else everything just feels like it's running wild. So I guess more of like just like digital plan. I don't like writing anything down too. Like my aunt said, I don't like physical paper. I don't like anything that I can't like undo, delete, or anything. Like I don't like anything that feels too permanent, too final. And I don't know if that has anything to do with my ADHD or just who I am as a person. Like even when I draw and like sketching and illustrations for fashion, I do it digitally. Like I'm terrified of doing it just on paper with like markers and all that. Because once you make a mistake or once you do, like you can't go back. Like it's either ruined or you work with it. But digitally, I can press undo and I can just do it over and over again until it's right. So
that's your perfectionism.
Yeah, right. I just find comfort in just planning and being able to work through things before it's like actually needing to be done. So I guess that would kind of be my system.
Okay. Thanks, Naja.
Can I add something, Sharon? And
Sure.
also, we always also advise parents to watch the diet. Sugar is a terrible, terrible thing that can actually worsen these symptoms, more especially with the hyperactivity type. So we always advise parents, maybe around 3, no sugars. After 3 o'clock, no sugars for your child, because it's true, because they can make your child more, sugary stuff can make your child more active, and also I know that there's been so many studies, controversial stuff about watching more TV, because again, these kids with that element of being hyper focused, they can play those games, which actually, for the longest time, parents thought games were terrible. Actually, they've been very good with their creativity. They do amazing stuff with them, but timing. We need to be very aware of timing and mindful of how long your child can sit in front of a screen. That's basically something that optometrists and ophthalmologists, they always tell us. We need to be mindful of the time our kids spend in front of the computer. So that the diet is important. You can add, we've seen that omega-3 too plays a role. For some reason on the studies, they say, you can actually give your child the omega-3, because we need those, amino acids for your brain. So those are the things, and also vitamin D. Vitamin D is good for emotions in general, and just your immune system too. And it's also good for your happiness. I mean, people here up here in Canada, it's cold in winter. Everyone needs to be on vitamin D in winter. So in general, make sure your child is on vitamin D. In adults, if you are 50 and above, take 1,000 international units a day. So those are the things that you can work around. And also exercise, yoga, mindful meditation, all these things, the journaling, help your child with organization, right? And therapy, advocate for your child. Advocate, most people at school, it's very important. Be transparent with the teachers so that they can help, because they are wonderful. They want to help your child thrive and be successful. Like I said, we see all these kids, they go in with straight A's once they get medication, if they need to be on medication. I just wanted to share that.
Oh, that's great. I think that was so needed to be said. And the other thing is, everybody can't afford medication. So it's good to know about home remedies, or vitamins and things and that sort of thing. It's unfortunate that mental health, like, well, in Canada, everybody can afford it, but in the United States, no. Some of those medicines are very expensive.
Very expensive.
Or controlled substances, where even if you go to the state, whatever, they won't give you Adderall, or they won't give you that kind of medicine, because it's a controlled substance. How often do you see families like this, where multiple people have attention deficit disorder?
You must be the first, and I want to bring you to my show to educate the world. Like, honestly, I'm so impressed with your family, Sharon, because we don't see this. And this is cross culturally. Yes, you'll hear about, yes, my dad. You hear people saying, maybe I think my dad has, but never diagnosed. You understand? So to see this intergenerational diagnosis, it's very rare, and it does exist, but people are not diagnosed. Many people are undiagnosed. Many people are not thriving in life and unleash their potentials to be the best versions of themselves, because they are not diagnosed, and they are labeled instead. People cannot tolerate them. People cannot, like I said, it even gets to where people even have failed relationships because of this, right? So I must say, you are just an amazing family.
Oh.
Kudos to you guys. Keep doing this, because we need to see this, because I just feel all of us are superstars. All of us have potential. And the one thing about ADHD, people are not just academic. There's other things, the art, the sports. Like,
Yes.
look at Naza. She's amazing with her fashion designing. So there's so much. Each one of us has a gift. Once you have this controlled, you can be the best version of yourself, right? So
Yes.
I honestly don't see it much, but we're starting to see people coming in now, and I think there's more education. Things like this, our show, it's more enlightening to people. People are starting to see, oh, there's no stigma in this. Oh, Sharon's family, they are amazing. Look at you guys, are professionals, and you are thriving in life. So I think once we start having these educational platforms, people will start coming out, because reality is people know themselves, right? You know your symptoms, and you can start saying, oh, and I kind of like the fact that you guys are a mix. There's Naza here, who is more of the more quiet and also the inattentive one, because it's not always the hyperactive one, right? Like we said in the beginning, the Najas get missed, and they could not get their A's while they are missed because someone was not paying attention to those. You know what, I'm in class, but I'm somewhere. That's what we see. And sometimes teachers are amazing. They catch these kids when they see that your child is just somewhere. I'm teaching, but he's browsing, he's somewhere. So that's usually the point. So yeah, honestly, I would love to see more families and getting
Right.
the help they need.
That's great. Well, it's the end of our show. Black Mental Health Matters. I have had such a great time hosting my family, and thank you to my mother who really has helped us to talk about these things and not hide them and get us the help that we needed. I would have never made it without her. I love you. Thank you, Naja. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, and to all of you guys. We'll see you next time on Black Mental Health Matters. Thank you.
Thank you so much.